Hello. All right. Okay, today I give you Ecclesiastes. Welcome, welcome. Starting an awesome book. I just transcribed the first 6 chapters, and I'm going to be very honest right now. I don't know how long this will take us. I don't know if this is a short book or a long book. I didn't even look that far ahead, nor do I remember what this book, what the length of this book was. All I remember was I liked the tone of it. Something in the tone of Ecclesiastes related with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. But as we look into the background a little bit further, Ecclesiastes, just so we're aware, is written by King Solomon, again, just like Proverbs. It's written by King Solomon, David's son, and it was more so in his source. They said it was, he was later in his life as he put together Ecclesiastes. So just so we are aware of the background. We are also going to be discussing this quote here. I know I said I would like to move away from the quotes, but we may as well just finish the one, finish this cycle, and then we will probably stop with the quotes. We'll be all well familiar with them by that point. Read them like 3-4 times now each. Anyways, this is the quote here. Towards the age of 26, they shoved him into politics. Another poem by Hilaire Belloc, 1870 to 1953. And I did look, I was thinking it was Hillary because, we had like a nursery rhyme. I was thinking it was a woman, Hillary. It's actually Hilaire Belloc, who was an ex-politician, French and English writer, politician, and historian. So, funny, right, that he was a politician, and then he's writing these beautiful poems, interesting poems, and he was also in politics. So thinking about that, thinking about life, just by me Googling just how to pronounce Hilaire and who Hilaire was, and was not in fact Hillary, we were going to go and look at this poem here. And as I was reading it, I think it actually goes really, really well with what we'll talk about and what we've been talking about. So we're actually just going to read this poem as a whole to preface. We haven't done that too often, and we have the beautiful time and the silence and the peace today. We're going to enjoy it. I hope everybody's doing well. Let's go ahead and read this poem. It's actually titled Lord Lundy. Okay, and we'll start here. Lord Lundy, from his earliest years, was far too freely moved to tears. For instance, if his mother said, "Lundy, it's time to go to bed," he bellowed like a little Turk. Or if his father, Dunkerier, said "Hi" in a commanding tone, "Hi, Lundy, leave the cat alone," Lord Lundy, letting go its tail, would raise so terrible a wail, as moved his grandpa the Duke to utter the severe rebuke. "When I, sir, was a little boy, an animal was not a toy." His father's elder sister, who was married to a parvenu, confided to her husband, "Drat, the miserable peevish brat, why don't they drown the little beast?" Suggestions to which, to say the least, are not what we expect to hear from daughters of an English peer. His grandmamma, his mother's mother, who had some dignity or other, the garter no matter what, I can't remember all the lot, said, "Oh, that I were brisk and spry, to give him that for which to cry." An empty wish, alas, for she was blind and nearly 93. Dear old butler thought, but there, I really neither know nor care. For what the dear old butler thought, in my opinion, butlers ought to know their place, and not to play the old retainer night and day. I'm getting tired, and so are you. Let's cut the poem in two. As it happened to Lord Lundy then, as happens to so many men, towards the age of 26, they shoved him into politics, in which profession he commanded the income that his rank demanded, in turn as secretary for India, the colonies, and war. But very soon his friends began to doubt is he were quite the man. Thus if the member rose to say, as members do from day to day, arising out of that reply, Lord Lundy would begin to cry. A hint at harmless little jobs would shake him with convulsive sobs, while as for revelations these would simply bring him to his knees and leave him whimpering like a child. It drove his colleagues raving wild. They let him sink from post to post, from 1,500 at the most, to 8 and barely 6, and then to be a curator of Big Ben. And then finally there came a threat to oust him from the cabinet. The Duke, his aged grandsire, bore the shame till he could bear no more. He rallied his declining powers, summoned the youth to Brackley Towers, and bitterly addressed him thus, Sir, you have disappointed us. We have intended you to be the next Prime Minister but 3. The stocks were sold, the press was squared, the middle class was quite prepared. But as it is, my language fails. Go out and govern New South Wales. The aged patriot groaned and died. Ah, gracious, how Lord Lundy cried. Okay. Okay. We're absorbing that. Thinking of the line that we talked about only, right? Towards the age of 26, they shoved him into politics. Thinking about this word shoved, okay? The aggression behind what a shove is. And then also thinking about how we felt reading that poem, and then the disrespect that this little lad, perhaps he was a little bit of a brat, perhaps he had some attention span issues, sensory issues, if you will, and they were fresh to him. They were disrespectful. His own family was disrespectful to him. His life of working in politics, right, raising more and more money, gaining leadership, gaining prowess, didn't really matter too much because he was, seemingly demoted, but also, pushed in to be a governor of New South Wales. And he was a whaler. No, I'm just kidding. But, anyways, right, it's a little bit dramatic, but also we can relate to the abruptness, right? Some of the disrespect that we may feel throughout life from people close to us, and how that's painful, and how it hurts, and how this world really is, it's kind of a game. It's like a lot of suffering, and you win and you lose, and even if you win, sometimes it's not even that great to win, We want to sometimes... we don't want to experience the loss, but sometimes the loss that we experience is more beneficial for us, and it leads us on to greater and better things, and we feel more connected to who we are in our lowest points, in our losses, and in the sadness. So perhaps this is why this young lad would have liked to be crying and wailing, because he was more in tune to his soft side, his sensitive side. So I thought that was a great poem, honestly. I like that poem because it really relates to what we will end up discussing, more or less. We'll find out. But this first part, let us begin. Let us begin with chapter 1, Ecclesiastes. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem, hence Solomon. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understandings of wisdom, and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this, too, is a chasing after the wind. I bought male and female slaves, and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. So I hated life, because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak. I said to myself, God will bring to judgment both the righteous and the wicked. For there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed. Again I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. Much dreaming and many words are meaningless. Therefore, fear God. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. All their days they eat in darkness, with great frustration, affliction, and anger. Everyone's toil is for their mouth, yet their appetite is never satisfied. Relatable. Relatable. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's just like, that's why I like this book so much, because it's like, yeah, man, like, we work, and like, what is it, we have enough to eat, and we eat, and then we're hungry again the next time. Like, we're literally just eating, we're working to eat. Like, how often do I feel that way? And it feels, meaningless. It feels meaningless. Like, what are we doing? I think the first time I read this, I was a little uncomfortable with the tone of this, because it hints, right, at the spirit of depression. It hints at the spirit of anxiety or, hopelessness. But we actually can reach beyond that, given our wisdom and understanding and how much we've struggled through much of this Old Testament reading, to be quite honest. We're reaching beyond the anxiety and the depression and reaching into the spirit of knowing that, yes, this is in fact meaningless, but that should not be a cause for disruption or a cause for misery. We are knowing, this is reaching towards the spirit of knowing that there is something greater than this. Okay, we can be and we can become greater than what we are now. We just have to put in the effort and fear God. Okay, that's the most important thing, remembering that God is, right? That God is, He is within us, and it is about God at the end of the day. So if you're focusing on all these other things, it's meaningless. It's meaningless. But if we can reach beyond that, like what Jesus was saying, how, heaven doesn't have to be a place beyond us, right? If we just open the door in our hearts and open that little window in our lives to where it's always accessible and we're always focused on this heavenly state and the joy and the continuous love and the pleasantness and the bliss that it brings, we can access this all the time, motivating us more and more to the more important things versus the meaningless toil, the work, the eating, the food. I can't. But it's true. It's very true, okay? So I wrote these down on the back of a bill envelope, because I just had a little scrawl moment so I wouldn't forget, because I was thinking I was just going to talk about, these feelings that are creeping through Ecclesiastes of depression, of, feeling like nothing matters, okay? Because it comes up again and again with this meaningless, but it's not that, okay? We're not talking about that. We're talking about reaching beyond to knowing that there is greater, there is better, okay? And it's not all the stuff that we concern ourselves with, that we focus on, is not really that important. So what is important, right? The relationships, how we treat one another, our family, how we make others feel, and how those people make us feel. That's very, very important. Our thoughts and our actions. So it gives us that the real toil is not external and material, it's very much internal. And if we could work more on the internal, more, not even equal, as much as we do on our external, more than we do on our external, the happiness, right, this window of heaven starts to open up and starts to appear, to where it becomes a door that we can open and access whenever we so choose, and we can be present in the world at the same time. So knowing, right, having that belief, the knowing, aka the belief, that this spirit of knowing saying the same thing, focusing on the internal more than the external. I was going to say at least make it the same, make it equal. Okay, the amount of effort that you're putting into this material work, make it the same effort on internal. But I now will say put more effort, more effort on the internal world versus the external world. Can be very hard to do, okay? But it's possible. So I think that's all I had written down, just those 3 points: beyond the spirits of the hard things, right? And then into the spirit of knowing or belief. We're moving into that now, the spirit of knowing that this is greater, and there can be greater, and there is greater, and how to access that greater all the time. So with that, I've been delving in, getting into the spirit of the internal. If you guys are sick of the entertainment, if you're sick of it, you're bored of it, okay, watching the same shows, of course you have your little guilty pleasures here and there, as does everybody. YouTube is a great resource, and I will put 2 channels here. I know I don't want to make this seem like a suggestion, but I'm just saying, if you are like me and you get a little bored of scrolling and such, and you want a good, you like YouTube and you want a good series to watch here and there, watch this series. Very nice. I talked to you about NDE, and so it's a little bit of a touchy subject, especially if you're somebody who's experienced something like that, but the stories are very beautiful. It will give you a lot of hope, and it'll help you get through these difficult times that we all experience, okay? It's not just you alone. So knowing that, everybody goes through crazy experiences and crazy lives, but nonetheless, it will give you that window, and it'll give you an opportunity to hear other people tell their story. It'll give you the opportunity to look into that window of the other side, and it will give you a lot of hope and give you a lot of good emotions and good feelings and more knowledge and understanding on, how this is all set up and what the purpose is, and etc., etc. Everybody has their own story, everybody has their own experience and perspective, but I think the stories are all beautiful and really interesting. So the reason why these people who have these experiences, these near-death experiences, come back is so they can tell this story. So I don't feel uncomfortable about telling you to go watch this stuff. It's not sacrilegious, it's not blasphemous, it's very real. And the only caution I will give is the sounds terrible, because what we're going to be reading through this is the, oh, that sounds fun, right? I'm like, that sounds interesting, like, why can't I have an experience like that? Again, remembering we're talking about near-death experiences, people who have died, not almost died, have died, and then come back. So again, this is not something that you chase after, but it will get you your brain going off and firing and thinking about how you can connect with that, by being perfectly present and perfectly aware and pain-free and safe, okay? How you can connect with that drug-free, okay? Drug-free, and how you can start experiencing the connection with the Lord. That's the most important thing, experiencing the connection with the Lord and starting to open that window, right? Imagine it's in your heart or wherever, but open that window a little bit more, a little bit more, and a little bit more, until you have a door that you can open and access whenever you wish. This is what we call 5-dimensional living, when we're talking about shifting dimensions and shifting our consciousness. People are talking about, we're entering the 5D, we're entering a 5D, and it is a lot of internal work that needs to be done to be able to do that. But these videos and these channels are really, really interesting, and it does give you just a nice fresh perspective, listening to people tell their beautiful stories. And like I said, the reason that they are able to come back, a lot of them have families and things like that, but it is so they can tell the story too. And a lot of them are actually encouraged by source, by spirit, by their guides to go ahead and share this information, make sure people are aware. So I like that. This is, I guess, another guilty pleasure for me. Ian's like, stop watching all this stuff about death, but it is intriguing, and because we're entering this meaningless Ecclesiastes, right? This feeling of like hopelessness and, toil, and we're getting bored and we're getting anxious. This is a good thing to listen to just really remind us on the important things. And you're going to hear the themes that actually we've been discussing this whole time, right? I just discovered this channel pretty recently. Here and there I'll go and watch a video or two, but yeah, you'll hear these themes and how, important it is to really, connect with God is really the most amazing thing that you can do now, presently. And this is what these people do after they've had this experience, is they're now locked in, they're connected, they can't forget, and they can't go back to a life where they weren't connected. So it's very important that way. So I'll leave you with this, and I'll put the channels, there's a few different ones that are good, but I'll put the channels in the comments. And I appreciate you guys listening. I'm going to do some more transcription, so we'll have a good steady pace for this week. But I appreciate you guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.